Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. This evening we are honoured to acknowledge Major General Ueno Kazushi, Director General, Logistics Department, Ground Staff Office, Ministry of Defence, Japan, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial and Army cadets from Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read just one of the stories behind those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private David Henry White. David White was born on the 23rd of November 1891 in Newcastle, New South Wales. Known as Dave, he was one of 14 children born to George and Charlotte White. David received his education at Newcastle Public School before gaining employment as a butcher. At the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, he was living in the town of Dora Creek on the Central Coast. David White enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 22nd of August 1915. He was assigned to reinforcements of the 2nd Battalion and commenced a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service from Sydney in March the following year, sailing on board the troopship Star of England. After several weeks at sea, Private White arrived in Egypt, where he was transferred to the newly formed 54th Battalion. His new battalion was a mix of new recruits and veterans from the recently abandoned Gallipoli campaign. He embarked for the Western Front in early June, and after a week-long voyage arrived in the French port city of Marseille. His unit was immediately sent north to the Franco-Belgian border, which had once been the site of bitter fighting, but was now comparatively quiet. The 54th Battalion was posted near the small village of Armentières in an area of the front known as the nursery sector, where recruits were introduced to life in the front lines. White entered the front lines on the 11th of July and took part in his first major battle 8 days later near the village of Fromelles. The battle was intended as a feint to prevent German reserves from moving south to take part in the Battle of the Somme. Underprepared and poorly planned, the attack was a massacre. Advancing troops were cut down in waves by the enemy. By the time the attack was called off, the 5th Division alone had suffered over 5,000 casualties in 24 hours. Private White was badly wounded by shrapnel during the battle. He was evacuated to England for treatment and spent the remainder of the year recovering in hospital. Private White returned to his unit in February of 1917, just in time to take part in the advance which followed the German strategic retreat to the Hindenburg Line. Months of bitter fighting followed until the enemy's retreat halted at its new front line near the village of Bullecourt. Here, the Allies launched major attacks in April and May in an attempt to break through enemy lines and recapture the village. The first attempt cost Allied units some 3,000 casualties with no ground gained, while the second eventually achieved its aims. White's unit was spared from taking part in these attacks, but was sent in after the second battle to mop up and consolidate the trenches seized by the Australian 2nd Division. White's unit entered the trenches around Bullecourt on the 13th of May. The following day, its location was heavily shelled by the enemy, causing severe casualties. White was in the support trenches with 4 of his comrades when the group was directly hit by a shell and killed. The battalion's chaplain wrote to White's mother to offer his condolences. One cannot speak too highly of the magnificent spirit shown by our men under all sorts of hardships and all kinds of danger. They are truly grand, and the names of those who have fallen are treasured and honoured amongst us all. May the knowledge that your son fell fighting for home, loved ones, and all that is truest and best bring with it deep and comforting consolation. May Almighty God bless you and comfort you, grant rest and peace to the soul of your dear son, and a happy reunion in eternal heaven. White and his comrades were buried where they fell. Due to the ongoing fighting in the area, their graves were later lost. Today, Private White is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux, amongst more than 10,000 others who have no known grave. David White was 25 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Villers-Brettoneux Memorial in France is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private David Henry White, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.